Well, I think there are a lot of possibilities we have to look at, and those are two of them. I also think that there are good domestic political reasons in Israel for our good friend to Netanyahu to take this step to show that he's sensitive to those Israeli citizens from the north of the country that have been displaced, and he's doing something about it. Of course, this whole thing is wrapped in a package of an assumption that this is because the Israeli military has really whipped Hezbollah, and Hezbollah, they basically have won the fighting. But I think there are a lot of other ways to look at it too. I don't see that Biden gains anything by a ceasefire. The election's over, and Biden has basically failed to exercise any effective pressure on the Israelis at all in the past 2 years. So I think this is a null issue that's being raised. I
I
believe that it probably is true that Netanyahu, if anyone, did the pushing, and they did the pushing for the reasons that I just cited, and possibly some other longer term objectives that he has. For example, since this was drafted up by the United States, I'd be suspicious of it in the first place, because I think it will be written in a way that it makes Netanyahu happy and gives him all kinds of options that he can exercise to restart the fighting and to basically let this thing get controlled by him. It depends who you talk to. I know certainly a number of people that have been on your program have cited the fact that Israel is going through an economic crisis. It's going through obviously a political crisis too, in terms of what is being said and what is coming out of the two conflicts that the country is engaged in. I tend to believe that that's true, although I also suspect it might be overstated. Everything that is being said and done about the fighting in Gaza and the fighting in Lebanon has a big political stink to it. And I rather suspect that we will find out in a few days what exactly the situation in Israel is. For example, a number of people on your program have cited the fact that Israel has been suffering major casualties in Lebanon, but we don't know that. Israel's not releasing any casualty figures, and whether if U.S. intelligence has numbers on this, they're certainly being quiet about it. So there are a lot of things we just don't know enough about yet. I think that's a classic Netanyahu ploy to have a cover story that explains why he does something that might turn out not to be terribly successful. So this is something we should be thinking about. I don't imagine that this state of play between the United States, Joe Biden, and the United States and Netanyahu, that Biden has any real cards to play. I mean, he can slow up some arms shipments, but uh, uh, we already have Trump saying emphatically that one thing his administration will do, there will be no restrictions on the weapons that will be sent to Israel, and there will be no delays on those weapons getting there. So, we kind of have evidence that within about less than 2 months, we are going to have a continuation, or perhaps even an increase in weapons going from the United States to Israel. That's coming straight out of Trump's mouth. The first demand that Biden made was a 30-day, which expired right after the election. And that was where he was saying, unless Netanyahu eased up on the deliberate starvation of the Gazans, there might have to be some adjustment in the weapons that Israel is getting. But of course, he did not, in fact, Biden did not, in fact, enforce that. So there's a lot of playing going on. I suspect you're correct in your suggestion that Biden is targeting Trump. He's not targeting the Israelis. He's not targeting the Ukrainians. I think he's trying to lock Trump into a certain a number of policy positions and a number of positions on the use of weapons. That's my suspicion. I was just reading this morning and considering the various options that were floating around, and I think that this is maybe Biden's revenge.
Interesting. I want to get into that with respect to Ukraine, where it seems to be more apparent. But before we do, what kind of hot water is Netanyahu in? He hasn't brought the hostages home. He doesn't have the settlers back. He hasn't defeated Hamas. His chief spokesperson is still in jail without bail for releasing secret documents. He's accused of doctoring Prime Minister office records showing when he spoke to generals on the morning of October 7th. And now he's got this conflagration of the ultra-Orthodox in the military. They don't want to go, and the military doesn't want them there. Is he still in hot water at home with all of these things flying about?
Well, yeah, I mean, he's still basically in trouble with the electorate because of the corruption charges against him and his wife. So I think that stink has kind of stayed with him. And most of these other things is just, as you say, it's a matter of perspective. I think opinion polls in Israel suggest that something like 90% of the population is fully supportive of exterminating the Palestinians, and he's certainly exterminating the Palestinians in a manner of speaking, and has also, of course, been at least up until this ceasefire, has been appearing to be sticking it to the Lebanese by this bombing campaign in which he's killing also more thousands of Arab civilians. So I think that what he's, if the perception is that he's clearing historic Palestine, or even more than that, of Arabs, of Christians and Muslims, that's received very favorably by the Israeli public. But you know, if you look at other issues, you're quite right. He says, "Where are the Mr. Israel says, where are the hostages? You've gotten what, 4 or 6 of them after all of this, and a lot of them were killed as a result of Israeli bombs. So you know, where are the hostages, and where is the evidence of actually defeating the various enemies that Israel has made in the last 2 years?" So, well, I would say absolutely, and this is, to me, this is the great failing of the current administration in Washington and also in London, and that couldn't you guys have foreseen this? Couldn't you see the risk of what you're doing and what you're playing at? This could be World War III, nuclear war III. This could destroy the earth as it currently exists, and you're playing games with this. I'm totally stricken dumb when I see and hear the stuff coming out of the White House and the stuff coming out of London, and it's absolutely amazing. What is wrong with you people? There's just been a news report, I don't know if you've seen it, that one of the major Russian ICBM sites, it's called Kapustan Yar, has cleared the airspace over the entire range of that site. In other words, they're sending a warning that we're ready to fire.
What will happen if they fire that, and at whom or at what will they fire it?
Well, that's the point. I mean, we don't know what they'd be targeting. So far, Putin has played a very, I think, careful game in terms of his retaliation, not necessarily feeding into an escalation. So we're going to have to play with this as it goes along. But this is just stupidity on the part of Britain and the United States to be provoking this situation. And also, of course, these reports about French and British soldiers heading for the front line in through Poland and into Ukraine. I mean, this is just this is madness. I'm not convinced about the tumbling down part. I just think he wants to lock Trump into the existing policy, and he's trying to do that by increasing the U.S. involvement. If you increase the U.S. involvement, you increase the risk to the United States, and some idiot in the White House can actually argue that, gee, we're threatened by this. I mean, we're threatened by this only because we created it. We created the monster.
How can Trump end the Ukraine war in 24 hours? As he's claimed he could.
He hasn't explained this to me personally. I have no idea, and I don't think anyone has any idea. A number of people you've had on your show over the past couple of days have mentioned that isn't it time for Trump to start, telling us what he intends to do instead of feeding it through people like Sebastian Gorka? I mean, come on. The one thing that's been very clear is that the Russians basically have a much more advanced military system. I'm talking about their hardware than the United States has. So who is threatening ultimately? Who is threatening whom? He's going to give. So Gorka is going to give more aid to he calls thug. He calls Putin a thug, and we're giving more aid to Zelensky, who is a thief, and so that's going to solve the problem. I mean, if we have more people like this in the new administration coming in and giving us their deep, profound thinking, we're in deeper trouble than we are with Joe Biden.
Here's even deeper trouble.